a stone in the path. Initiated in São Paulo with the support of the coffee bourgeoisie oligarchy, the revolution of 1932 did not achieve its true objectives: the end of the provisional government and the removal of Getúlio Vargas from the leadership of that government. Quite the contrary, the military victory over the rebels ended up guaranteeing Vargas enormous prestige, the desired power, and also great influence over the Constituent Assembly that would be installed in November of the following year. Victorious, full of whims and personal marks, Vargas became impervious to the criticisms of his political adversaries. Although accused of being a caudillo, Machiavellian, and opportunist, with strong resolve and measured steps, he decided to move forward, reeking of English cologne and continuing his celebrated and irreversible trajectory. Undoubtedly, he had achieved an enviable position, that of the most important Brazilian politician, a kind of symbol of national emancipation, the one who would create in the near future a strong, united, proud, new, and sovereign Brazil, built on the foundations and pillars of a laborism that was beginning to bloom. But behind that ever-smiling figure, always impeccably dressed, with the blue wisp of his unlit cigar hanging in the air, loomed an inevitable and permanent threat, that of a cruel, capricious dictatorship, yet as somber as all other dictatorships. Thinking about this, Manuel Jacinto Coelho was thoroughly chilled, worried, contemplative. The historical future, the political direction of the country, and the fate of the Brazilian people seemed to parade before his eyes through scenes colored with all the hues of life. The facts and their developments were almost always anticipated for him. For this, it was enough just to close his eyes, and there it was. Everything laid out exactly as it would happen, on a vast and natural cinema screen. Often he was frightened and wanted to flee, other times not. His curiosity had become greater than the fear that initially so scared him. Over time, things had changed. Now, filled with civic courage, he was determined to fully understand everything that was going to happen. If the unexpected surprised him, the spectacle pleased him. The buzzing of communication and contact from the other world in tune began to transform into a huge and sparkling cascade of light. A light that varied in color, shade, size, and intensity. It almost always started silver, with a deep, enchanting glow. Then it would give way to blue, initially light, then dark, vivid, strong, mysterious. From royal blue it shifted to turquoise and other bluish tones. Then came yellow, also variable, up to gold. Afterward, lettuce green, flag green, olive green, dark green. In the crackling of red, the astonishment, the scream, and the flash. Manuel! The phase of thought is about to end. Once the phase of thought is concluded, nature will cease to nourish the thinker's thoughts. And for lack of natural nourishment, everyone's thought will begin to weaken. Therefore, prepare yourself. With the change of phase, you will begin the construction of a new world, a rational world, real and true. Take note, Manuel. Until 1935, nature will be governed by electric and magnetic energies. Afterward, no. Nature will change, coming to be governed by rational energy, by reasoning. Warm, strong, serious. The male voice tears through the universe, warning and guiding. We are in 1933, Manuel. Only 2 years remain. Be patient. Very soon, you will learn the path of reasoning development, and will have to teach it through a book to all humanity. Remember, you do not belong to this world. You don the animal carcass to fulfill a dignified and salvific mission. That of the rationalization of the peoples, When the great moment arrives, everything will become very clear and luminous. Set aside your worries, stay calm. Try to live normally as an inhabitant of Earth. I am speaking of your world, trying to guide you so you may quickly traverse the path that was destined for you. Hope and mystery in the gaze. Manuel Jacinto. Coelho contemplates space, face wet with sweat, arms open, in a demonstration of tenderness, kindness, and dedication. In the chalice of knowledge, the lessons of a magical universe. The book you are going to write, Manuel, will be definitive. It will show the beginning and the end of the world, the path of light and eternity, the road to salvation. It will reveal knowledge so that everyone can return to their world of origin, the rational plane. The book will be the true light of the rational animal, the energy that will propel him towards knowledge. Therefore, do not forget, Manuel, the revelations contained in this book must never be used for commerce and exploitation. They should be used for the salvation of all and also to provide rationals the return to their world of origin, to indicate to them the path of redemption and eternal life. A chic address of nobility, and also the stage for great and unforgettable parties during the Second Empire, the Itamaraty Palace, the headquarters of the first three Republican governments, was designated by the provisional government to house the commission charged with drafting the preliminary project of the new constitution. As an employee of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs stationed in that palace, Manuel began to follow the work of the commissioners and also to assist them. He soon became friends with Minister Afrânio de Melo Franco, appointed president of the Constitution Commission. And as friendship often implies, with many requests and solicitations, Manuel no longer had fixed hours for arriving and leaving work, serving his friend. Like every Brazilian, he harbored a dream, that of the reconstitutionalization of the country. In the long corridors with marble floors, and in the expansive halls with gilded moldings of the Itamaraty Palace, the activity intensified as days passed after the commission was established. Besides Minister Afrânio of Foreign Affairs, two other ministers started working there. Oswaldo Aranha of Finance, formerly of Justice, and José Américo de Oliveira of Transportation and Public Works. In addition to them, the commission included other famous politicians, intellectuals, and jurists. Appointed by Vargas, present were João Mangabeira, Arthur Ribeiro, Assis Brasil, Temístocles Cavalcante, Prudente de Moraes Filho, Carlos Maximiliano Pereira dos Santos, Agenor de Reúne, Francisco José de Oliveira, and General Góes Monteiro. They worked driven by a desire for profound change in national life. Cautious yet pragmatic, Vargas closely followed the work of the Constitution Commission and the drafting of the preliminary project. His continued tenure in government depended on the constituents, and he was aware of this. Hence the importance of his presence, his diligence, and his political skill. Discreet despite the smile, Vargas was careful not to open up or expose himself. He played the game, sometimes hesitantly, other times complicit. Solitary and stubborn in his boundless political ambition, he did not back down an inch. Without fear or remorse, he did not spare even the friendship of his most loyal followers, turning them into puppets of his unspoken intentions and well-oiled pieces in his orchestrated political maneuvers. Overcoming every conceivable obstacle and seeking simple, desired solutions for the challenges of his life, Manuel Jacinto Coelho charted his own course. Possessing a contagious idealism, discreet and tenacious, he soon endeavored to broaden his stride, maximizing his vitality. "Work dignifies man," he often repeated, never taking his eyes off what he was doing, always committed to lofty goals and with a tremendous capacity for accomplishment. He became esteemed by his colleagues who spared no praise for him. "Ah, Mr. Manuel, he performs tasks with utmost rigor, effort, and dedication, and he also adapts with the greatest ease to any kind of work. It seems he was born to serve. He accepts, quite naturally, what his feelings dictate, especially the intuitions, or rather, the reasoning." Master of a life rich in singular and also unexpected events, Manuel no longer had worries nor cared about the risks. He received and assimilated the advice, lessons, and norms dictated to him through the universe, seeking to adapt them to his own life. Indifferent to the prejudices of the era, he mingled fearlessly with people from the most diverse social strata, just as he asserted his presence among ministers with intelligent suggestions. His absence was keenly felt among the city's bohemians. "Do you know where Manuel, the one with the 7-string guitar, has been? The man has vanished, evaporated. It's been more than 3 weeks since he last showed up here. People have been complaining a lot about his absence. Have you heard anything about Manuel, João da Baiana?" "No, Donga. I haven't heard from Manuel. It's been a long time since I've crossed paths with him. He hasn't been appearing here in Lapa, nor has he visited Tia Tiata as he always did." In truth, Manuel Jacinto Coelho was very busy. He left work late, hungry, tired, thinking only of a bath and some rest. Like a peculiar prince of the distressed, he dedicated the little time he had to attending to the needy at the Francisco de Assis Spiritist tent on Rua Lopes da Cruz, Opotninaim, in Meyer. He sought peace, tranquility, and light. He wished to lie in a hammock, forgotten, cradled by the gentle evening breeze, and watch carefree the faltering descent of twilight. To be far from the city, from the inconsequential, sentimental, and nostalgic Bohemia. He knew the excess of work had oppressed his cavaquinho, leaving his old guitar deaf, mute, and embittered. But that warm April afternoon would be different. The Constituent Commission had suspended work early, allowing him a bit more time for rest. Leaving the Itamaraty Palace, the cicadas still sang in the oidaceiros on Rua Larga de São Joaquim, and a cheeky wind swept the street in its entirety. On the sidewalk, he paused for a moment. He opened his jacket and wiped his face with a handkerchief. He thought about stopping by Café Paraíso to have a glass of ice-cold water and also a coffee. Then, well, he would head to Avenida Central, today Rio Branco, towards the beach. He was eager for the sea, a sea full of lyricism and energy, with large noisy waves breaking on the rocks and spreading in foams. A mysterious sea, sobbing, swelling, bellowing for a solution. He let himself be seduced by the increasingly strong scent of the sea. He heard the noise of feet crunching on the sand and felt the heat of the sun opening up behind him in that sky of late afternoon and early evening. He wished to be the sea, unpredictable, unable to remain still. The son of musicians, Manuel was conceived, born and raised to the sounds of waltzes, polkas, mazurkas, and traditional Brazilian songs. He was born on December 30th, 1903, on Rua Barão do Iguatemi in Cidade Nova, close to Rua do Matoso and Praça da Bandeira. It was a summer night under an open and star-studded sky. During the delivery, his mother, Rosa Santos, a piano teacher, was assisted by a neighbor, Maria Amelia, known as Amelia Baena, a black woman and the daughter of a slave freed by the law of free womb, whose concern now was to help others be born. As soon as the first pain struck, Dona Rosa called for her, ready to help, and with a broad smile, Amelia Baena promptly arrived to assist her. Beyond her culinary skills, this woman, like few others, mastered the secrets of life. Her presence soothed Dona Rosa. With shirt sleeves rolled up and a bow tie, the conductor Manuel, the father, tried to help, though visibly restless and nervous. "Bring a clean cloth. Get some water boiling, we're going to need it," Amelia instructed. Little Manuel was quick to arrive. The birth was normal. As she supported him, Amelia Baena smiled with happiness. With broad lips, a sweaty forehead, and a black hand holding the baby by the legs, she exclaimed in a blend of joy and hope, "It's a boy. It's a boy, Rosa. He will fight for men. He brings a song of love, peace, harmony, and freedom." Dona Rosa said nothing, just closed her eyes, swayed by the chords of a sweet and gentle melody that reached her ears. Moved, Amelia Baena began to weep, her mouth open, her throat red from shouting truths. Her crying would tear through the calm. Her deep, resonant voice would cut through the wind, proclaiming that the newborn boy carried a message from the universe and was a symbol of the union of races, because black and white are equal. A vague sense of blessing filled the air. In the sky, a spectacle of light, a meteorite shaped like a star had descended to Earth, landing right in front of the house of the newborn boy. The warm night of surprise and curiosity quickly drew a crowd to the site. The mayor, the mulatta, and the general. There they all were, tailors, carpenters, witch doctors, civil servants, shoemakers, journalists, lawyers, politicians, smallholders, masons, shoe shiners, confectioners, laundresses, rogues, merchants, and seamstresses. They hurried toward Praça da Bandeira, their footsteps covering the cobblestones and sidewalk designs. Conductor Manuel was joyful. After emptying a mug of wine, he lit a cigar and approached the window. He wanted to behold the night and give thanks to the heavens, when someone asked him, "So, Maestro, another Silva born in your house?" "Not Silva, another Manuel, my friend. Manuel Jacinto Coelho." Listening in on the conversation, a slender, tall reporter with slick black hair murmured softly, "Silva or Coelho, what difference does it make? In truth, we are all just so-and-sos, deceived by politicians, exploited by bosses, and humiliated at street corners." Wearing a long flared dress adorned with bias and lace, a ribbon in her hair, young Leonor Nunes dos Santos watched the entire spectacle with interest and amazement. In the innocence of her 9 years, she found everything very beautiful and illuminated, a day of celebration with all those people around, a distant time full of memories and longing. That day, much of what happened was beyond little Leonor's understanding. Now, nearly a centenarian, with white hair framing her lovely face, she repeats her tale of a prince to her grandchildren. In her weary voice, the sublime, the beautiful, the tender, and the nostalgic. That night, a star fell from the sky. It was a big, blue star. It kept descending, 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 leaving behind a brilliant trail of light wherever it passed. The bells rang and people came out of their houses going into the street. They were moved and happy. Men and women, young and old, poor and rich, adults and children embraced each other. It was a new era of love, of fellowship, of friendship and respect. a day of celebration. After all, a boy who had come from afar had just been born. Who? A grandchild asks with interest, and Dona Leonor responds, moved. The Night of Harmony. Black Amelia Baiana was right. Manuel had come into the world in the color of bronze, uniting the races. And there he was, to fight for the redemption of man, for definitive freedom, to return him to his natural state. Black sweat flooding the earth. That woman, with her immense power of perception between sobs and tears, felt the power of the energy emanating from that tiny body. So much so that she stammered. With the arrival of Manuel, a new era begins. After him, there will be no place for the miserable masters of life, because everyone will know where they come from, where they are going. Conductor Manuel couldn't quite understand what Amelia Baiana meant to say, but he sensed that his son had come into the world, predestined for a mission. And that woman knew everything. She was a living, throbbing testimony to the announcement of a new era. With this certainty, he looked up to the sky and prayed to the true God. Father, may the sacrifice of my son serve a purpose. During the previous night, Manuel had not managed to sleep. His visions had left him deeply troubled. Now, back at work, he could not hide his unease. In an attempt to escape the curiosity of his office colleagues, he hurriedly crossed the gallery where the busts of diplomats were displayed, reaching the garden. By the water mirror of the vast lake, flanked by palm trees, Manuel examined his tired face, his eyes red. He felt an urge to go home and rest a little, but he abandoned the idea, knowing there was much to be done that day at the Itamaraty Palace. Thinking about this, he sat down on the grass and tried to recall his childhood, hoping to erase those images that tormented him so much. How he missed the days of his youth, the life colored in crayons. In the backyards of his childhood on the forgotten circus ground, there was no room for worries. All those strange events had already begun to mark his path, provoking fear and unexpected reactions. He smiled at the memory of himself running barefoot and shirtless through the streets of Cidade Nova, jostling for space with other children, and the eyes of Amelia Baiana following and protecting him, surrounding him with care. Back then, as now, he loved birds and animals. Later, he moved to Rua Alice in Rocha, enrolled at Escola Modelo on Rua Ananiri in Riachuelo. It soon became clear to his teacher. Student Manuel already knew how to read, write, and count, and more. He knew everything. Asked of him, history, science, Portuguese, mathematics, geography, astronomy, and even politics, which was astonishing. Everything, without having previously attended school. Remembering Dona Joana, the teacher, he smiled. After meeting him, she had deteriorated. Puzzled, confused, disoriented, she constantly asked him, "Manuel, can you read my mind?" "Look, I was about to ask you that question, but you answered it before I even asked. How did you do that?" Young Manuel was unaware of his powers and ended up confusing the teacher even more, poor thing. She began talking to herself. One day, however, Dona Joana decided to clarify everything. She could not contain herself and called Dona Rosa to the school. She wanted an explanation for the phenomenon. To protect her son, Manuel's mother hid the truth. She lied without any fear. Everything he knows, he learned at home from me. Manuel is a very intelligent boy. I had no trouble teaching him. But he's up to date even on politics. Don't you think that's too much for a 10-year-old? Dona Joana, Manuel is a boy who retains everything he hears and assimilates facts with enormous ease. What he knows about politics, I'm sure, he learned by listening to conversations at home. If the lie spared Manuel from people's indiscretion, it was not enough to reassure Dona Rosa. She returned home very worried, distressed, and impressed. It was unbelievable all that she had heard about Manuel. At night, right after dinner, she told her husband what was happening. Maestro tried to calm her. Rosa, Manuel is a prodigious child. I would say more, a child with a destiny. He came into this world to fulfill a mission. You should not be surprised nor worried. Take everything, my love, naturally and patiently. Be understanding and dedicated. After all, we were the chosen ones. I don't know why, but we were chosen. Maestro Manuel embraced his wife. He then recalled the birth of his son, that meteorite in the shape of a star, and also the seemingly nonsensical yet true and profound words of Emilia Bayana. Manuel's eyes were moistened by the tears of longing when a voice from the universe called upon him to reason and began to guide him. Come now, Manuel, the hour is upon us. President Getulio Vargas is en route, and you are to guide him. Do not tense up or worry. I shall be by your side and lead you. Repeat precisely what I shall tell you. Through my words, you shall grasp the visions of last night distinctly. In trying to avoid them, communication had been hindered. Come, Manuel. We bear a most crucial message for the arriving president. A strange force nudged him forward. Along the way, he adjusted his coat, tie, and ran a comb through his hair. He retrieved a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped his face. Before long, Getulio Vargas arrived at the Itamaraty Palace, accompanied by a vast entourage. With a smile and engaging demeanor, he greeted everyone, shaking each hand in turn. Then, he proceeded towards the office of Minister Afranio de Melo Franco to review and discuss the draft of the new constitution. It was at this moment that Manuel intercepted him. President, I must speak with your excellency. I bring significant revelations. Getulio paused, carefully considering Manuel's words. Knowing him to be a civil servant at the Itamaraty, he looked into his eyes and responded, I would be delighted to converse with you. However, due to my current engagement with Minister Afranio, I cannot attend to you immediately. You will have to wait a bit. As soon as the meeting concludes, I will have you called. I will wait, Mr. President. Vargas continued on, leading the procession of sycophants. Eyes on the retinue, Manuel observed. No ruler, however adept, can ever escape the fate of enduring sycophants. Rhetorical, they purr like madams, cats, at the feet of those in power. They are the true angoras of the politics of patronage and privilege. And most curiously, they even preserve a feline disposition. They love the house where they reside, in this case a palace, the government palace. He smiled. Then he rubbed his hands together, feeling more at ease. He had taken the first step. Free from concern and bursting with energy, he returned to his desk at the office to anxiously await his meeting with Vargas. But as soon as he settled into his chair, the unexpected occurred. Before his eyes, the light of the Annunciation appeared again, and the warm, grave voice spoke. Manuel, We are entering the rational phase, the final phase of life in matter. In this phase, a new culture, the rational culture, will emerge. Through this new culture, everyone will be able to obtain guidance to maintain balance. You will be the herald of this culture, and those who wish to acquire it will not need to leave their homes, go to churches, temples, or shrines. The rational culture is a natural knowledge, Manuel. It is not a science of imagination, you will see. Manuel closed his eyes and listened intently to the words reaching his ears. The intensity of the light increased, its beams multiplying, deep and sparkling. Through the rational culture, man will learn all the secrets of life, who he is, where he comes from, how he comes, and what he is doing in this life, and also where he is going, how he will go, and why, in a logical, simple, and clear manner with proofs and confirmations. The mysteries of nature will be unveiled. Philosophical concepts of life and religion will then completely fall to the ground, utterly outdated. Manuel Jacinto Coelho rested his elbows on the desk, covering his eyes with his hands, listening intently. You will come to know the superior, rational, and represented on earth. You will have to teach men, women, and children that life is a rosary of beads and that all the inhabitants of the earth are enchanted. You will show them the path of rational immunization, of truth and reason. Manuel then inquired, why did the rational culture not arrive sooner? Oh, Manuel, astonishment does not always arise with the discovery of something new, nor through an unexpected event. Sometimes astonishment sleeps for years and years in the bed of the everyday and routine, and it awakens carelessly when someone shakes the sleeper. Manuel smiled again at the jest, but the voice, taking on a tone of seriousness, decreed, everything has its time, Manuel. Learn this, and the time will come. No tree bears fruit before its time. Therefore, be patient. The transcendental message, Manuel's communication with the other world, was suddenly interrupted by the arrival of a man in his early 40s, with a neatly trimmed mustache. Quickly, Mr. Manuel. The President has sent for you. He is waiting for you in the Grand Hall. The Brazilian economy was finally beginning to recover. Cotton had emerged in the market as the second major export product, partially alleviating the coffee crisis. The surge in industrial productivity was also remarkable, and the country irreversibly resumed its march towards growth. Vargas intensified a support program for the coffee sector and took full control, through his government, of the affairs in that sector. With shrewdness, he implemented a plan to reformulate the system for paying the foreign debt, which at the time amounted to £250 million. All of Brazil's trade surplus was now utilized to pay off this debt, a measure that led to reduced interest rates and gave the government absolute credibility abroad. He was satisfied with the economic policy developed by his government. However, social policy was a cause for immense concern. He recognized the need for closer relations between employers and employees through the union field. Otherwise, he would not find ways to neutralize the strong anarchist influence and contain the growing communist influence. When Manuel entered the Grand Hall, Vargas was speaking to Minister Afranio. Enemies, Afranio, I do not know if I have them. If I do, they will not always be enemies. Today, who cannot become friends tomorrow. Caprice and ambition characterize the man beyond his cigar, his belly, his smile. "Come in, please, make yourself at home. Brazil belongs to you, too," said Vargas upon seeing Manuel. As he was leaving, Minister Afranio bid farewell and departed. With a heavy gaucho accent, Vargas said, "From this moment, I am at your disposal, ready to listen." Manuel then began to explain, "I run a spiritualist tent in Maye, a small house of charity." I understand. You seek assistance. Well, the President shall assist you." "The President is mistaken. I am not here to seek help, but to offer it. Through my clairvoyance, I have become aware of an accident. Your Excellency will suffer a severe accident, and I am here to warn you of the danger. I would greatly appreciate being able to assist you, but that is beyond my control." "An accident? Are you certain of what you speak?" "I am." From natural curiosity, Vargas shifted to concern. His cheerful, rosy complexion soon clouded over, transforming into an icy mask. "But how, sir? How?" Vargas faltered. "Did you come to know of this accident?" "It was last night, Mr. President, during my meditation. The vision was brief, but I can tell you that the accident will involve an automobile. I saw you injured along with others, and I implore you to believe my words and be cautious. And what of my administration? Do you approve?" In Vargas's query lay dual intents: a need to change the subject and to probe Manuel. Vargas entertained the possibility that he was dealing with a troubled man. "I am indeed appreciative of your government. However, I see a need for greater concern for social policy aimed at serving the working classes. The powerful, of course, will be displeased, but over time they will recognize, accept, and applaud you. Yet the Brazilian worker needs more, much more." "How so?" "They need a Ministry of Labor, the enactment of a unionization law, a law for the protection of the native worker, a reduction in migration flows. In education, Mr. President, we urgently need to modernize secondary and higher education, create the long-dreamed of Brazilian universities, promote a broad reform of secondary education." Vargas was stunned, flabbergasted. Manuel had effortlessly paraded his intentions and governmental plans as if he had opened his brain, speculating, probing an unbelievable feat. "So, Mr. President, am I right?" "Of course you are right, Mr. Manuel." "We will also need," Manuel persisted, "a revision of the electoral legislation. Your Excellency will require it. We are approaching the elections. Rest easy, no need to ask. You will emerge victorious. The Constituent Assembly will elect you President of Brazil. Power will remain in your hands for a long time. Now be careful." "I shall be very careful, Mr. Manuel." Manuel stood up. He bid farewell and left. As he crossed the threshold of the main door of the Grand Hall, 3 crystal glasses that were on the table shattered without anyone touching them. Vargas shuddered. It felt as though someone had entered to break them using a stylus. For a while, Vargas remained seated, confused, puzzled. The wind furiously swept across the escarpment, bending the trees and threatening to carry away the roofs of small houses. The heavy, intense rain rolled down the mountain in vast waterfalls. Such was the volume of water. illuminated by lightning. The deserted road had become slippery and dangerous. Indifferent to the storm and the risks, the presidential Lincoln pressed on, conquering the distance, heading towards the Rio Negro Palace in Petropolis. Seated to the left, in the rear seat of the car, with his wife Darcy and son Getulio by his side, Vargas remained silent, closely observing all the chauffeur, Euclides, Jose Fernandez's movements. Captain Tenant, Celso Pestana, aide-de-camp to the President of the Republic, occupied the small seat facing the head of government and sought to reassure everyone. At one point, Mrs. Darcy switched places with her son, frightened by the thunder's boom and the sudden, intense brightness of the lightning slicing the sky. Concerned, she complained of the cold and the gale that now threatened to tear off the car's top. The chauffeur tried to reduce speed as the rain intensified, out of concern. But upon reaching kilometer 53 of the old Rio Petropolis road, near the third viaduct, visibility became even more challenging. He thought of stopping, waiting for the storm to pass, but that might be worse, he imagined. So he decided to continue. Suddenly, the unexpected, a tremendous crash, panic, terror, fear, and death. A rock weighing 80 kilograms, dislodged from the slope, rolled down from the mountaintop and landed right in the center of the care. On the aide-de-camp to the president, Captain Tenant Celso, whose face was crushed, died instantly. Getulio, with both legs fractured, tried, dragging himself and moaning, to help Mrs. Darcy, who could not endure the pain, having suffered an exposed fracture of the left leg, and fainted. By luck or protection, young Getulio was unharmed, but was greatly shaken, crying profusely. In the house of Manuel Jacinto Coelho, at 89 Lopez de Cruz Street, in Maye, the alarm clock began to ring noisily, stopping shortly thereafter, definitively, at 7:30 p.m. A whirlwind invaded the house, sweeping through all the rooms, tearing down the curtains, and turning the pages of the calendar on the wall until April 25th, day and hour of the tragedy. Knocked down by the wind, eyes fixed on the ceiling, Manuel watched the disaster, extremely nervous. This time the dazzling cascade of light did not appear. After being knocked down, he entered a state of contemplative immobility. The noise was deafening, indescribable. The red light, crackling, the flash, the astonishment, the stone rolling down the mountain, then slipping and plunging into space to land on the car. He screamed, but the scream did not escape his throat. A terrible, agonizing situation of prostration and terror, painful, suffering, desperate. Before his eyes, the faces of Vargas, his wife Darcy, the boy Getulio, and the chauffeur Euclides. Rescued, they were taken, minutes later, to the San Jose Sanatorium in Petropolis. There they had to be operated on by doctors Haroldo Leitão da Cunha and Florencio de Castro Araujo. Crippled, tense, embittered, still lying on the ground, unable to move, Manuel asked himself the reason for it all. Then he heard the voice of the Annunciation. The happiness that shines in the world, my good Manuel, is a happiness without foundation. And happiness without a solid base ceases to be happiness, exposing the living to trances, always in search of it. The more one seeks happiness, the more elusive it becomes. There are people living insignificant moments in the vague hope of being happy, dying without ever achieving happiness. My good Manuel, there's no one on earth who can say I am truly happy, because when everything is fine on one side, on the other side, everything goes wrong, and the search for happiness continues. But why is happiness not found? Manuel asked. Because the world is full of struggles, and where there are struggles, there is suffering. Happiness cannot exist. Some fight for love, others for business, many for improvements in life, several due to illness, some for ideals, all in the hope of achieving what they desire. In short, a life of struggles, of sacrifices and suffering. And there's more, continued the voice of the Annunciation. The rich fight, the poor fight, children of a nature that does not regulate. One moment too cold, another unbearably cold. Winds punishing, maltreating, wounding, and killing. Suddenly an unbearable heat. Diseases of all forms and species. Therefore, if nature does not regulate, how can the living wish to be happy, disordered, without balance? The question hung in the air. Manuel followed the reasoning. The voice, in a paternal tone, explained, happiness is a word that exists only in name, arranged to pacify the deluded, to alleviate those who do not know the secrets of life. How can a mother be perpetually happy when she is always worried about her children? What happiness can parents have who are tormented by the same concern? In the search for happiness, everyone curses, suffers, struggles, and faces hardships. The sun, the rain, and the dew. Do you want to be happy, Manuel? I do, who doesn't? To be happy, Manuel, it is necessary to bring to oneself what is right, to live in the right way, not in the uncertainty in which everyone lives. I will show you very soon the path to happiness, the solution to all life's problems, and you will have to teach it to humanity. Awakening the next morning, still under the effect of painkillers and convalescing from surgery, Vargas had before his eyes the image of Manuel Jacinto Coelho, hat on head and a straw cigarette in his mouth, illuminated by an intense silver light. The worst is over. You will recover quickly now. Have patience, believe. The image of Manuel then disappeared. Vargas could not speak, although he wished to converse with that man. A singular figure, Mr. Manuel knew the secrets of life and the mysteries of death. He decided. As soon as he had recovered, he would seek him out. That man who had warned him of the danger of the accident and had now appeared materialized could help him. He remembered their first meeting, the sincerity of Manuel's words, his desire to collaborate, uninterested, unpretentious help. Several times as he listened to him, he was chilled, but he tried to control his emotions. After all, it did not suit a president to go around knocking heads or being swayed by premonitions, spiritualism. He would seek out Manuel, needing to thank him. As he thought this, Minister Afranio de Mayo Franco arrived to visit him, accompanied by Dr. Pedro Ernesto, mayor of the Federal District. After greeting him and before discussing his health status or recounting how the accident occurred, Vargas wanted to know, Afranio, how is Manuel? Which Manuel, President? That employee of yours at the Itamaraty? I think he's fine. But why does the President want to know about him? Vargas smiled, replying simply, I don't know. He seemed like a good man. 2 months later, Vargas was fully recovered. After moving him to his own health house in Rio de Janeiro, Dr. Pedro Ernesto devoted himself entirely to his care until he was cured. He couldn't, however, forget Manuel. When he learned of the electoral results of the constituent on May 30th, he saw him again, always illuminated by the silver light. This Mr. Manuel seems really like a man from another world. The overwhelming victory of the state representatives had guaranteed him another dream: to become President of the Republic, elected through indirect vote, a fact that would occur on July 17th of the following year, one day after the promulgation of the Constitution. Hat on head and straw, cigarette in mouth, Manuel seemed to accompany him. He felt the desire to see him again, to thank him, and to embrace him, and also to hear him. After all, he knew things. He wasted no more time. He looked at the clock, lit the cigar, picked up the phone and called Minister Afranio de Meio Franco at the Palacio do Itamaraty. Dr. Afranio? Yes, this is Dr. Getulio speaking. I am looking to find out about Mr. Manuel Jacinto Coelho, that employee. He asked me to solve a problem for him, and I will attend to it. It is about a job for a relative, a studious and competent person deserving of the opportunity. Please ask him to come to the Palacio do Catete immediately, as I do not have much time. I will send him, yes, and otherwise, President, I am well, Dr. Afranio. I have recovered and am ready to serve our country. That is great, Dr. Getulio, that is great. I'll hang up now, Dr. Afranio. Don't forget to send Manuel here. Yes, President. It was not long before Manuel arrived at the Palacio do Catete with his almost 2 meters of height and mystery. He was immediately whisked into the President's office. There, Vargas awaited him anxiously, restless, pacing back and forth and smoking heavily. "How is the man from the other world?" he exclaimed smilingly upon seeing him. Then he came to embrace him, happy and grateful. "I don't know how I escaped that terrible accident, Mr. Manuel. That accident you had warned me about and asked me to be careful of. But I recognize it could have been much worse, much more tragic." And Getulio recalled, "When I heard the crash, I closed my eyes. With my eyes closed, I saw your face. At that moment, I was aware that I wouldn't escape the accident, but that I would survive because you were by my side. I summoned you here to thank you and also to give you a gift." He walked to the desk and, opening the drawer, took out a small box wrapped in colorful paper. He said, "It's a watch, Mr. Manuel. A fine brand watch, small token. When you wear it, you will remember your friend the President and how grateful I am. Know that wherever I am, I will not forget you. And I hope you will always be with me." Manuel smiled, lowered his head, touched by emotion. Then he began to speak. "In this life, nothing is real, starting with life itself. If life were real, no one would lose it, Mr. President. What seems right today, tomorrow may be wrong, because we live in a phase of mismatches, of misalignments. Man is a vague creature without destiny, born on earth without knowing why or for what. And how are we to know why, Mr. Manuel? In 2 years, Mr. President, with the beginning of the rational phase, the phase of reasoning, when humanity will learn about the world of its race, and also how to return to it, life will no longer have secrets. Does the president know the secret of life? A weak and golden ray of sunlight illuminated Vargas's round face. Surprised and curious, he absorbed in silence the wise words of Manuel. Life has very clear organizations for those who know how to live. For those who do not, life becomes disorganized and difficult. Organic beings clash, fight, destroying life itself. To be well-formed, well-constructed, balanced for good living, life requires that organic beings and organizations be parallel and suited to the way life is constituted. The power of life is in what organizations can do to equate to life. What's the use of having life, living, and not knowing how to live, Mr. President? Manuel asks, then answers, well, it's worth nothing, because the more one tries to organize life, the more it becomes disorganized. And by becoming disorganized, it reaps more suffering. It's like the tide, always against the tide in the turbulent sea. Just like the storms that reign in the life of the living, they end up wrecking his life, leaving him to wonder and say, the more I seek the good, the more it eludes me, the farther it gets, because I cannot see what to do with life. And he concluded, in this bitter twilight, in this infernal nightmare, in this valley of tears, the living ponders an infinity of things, without knowing how to resolve the ideal. But Mr. Manuel, what would be the ideal from your point of view? It would be to live in a natural, true, clean, vast, pure world, away from problems, humiliations, anxieties, and suffering. A world of union, harmony, and fraternity. A world without lies, without distrust, of balance and virtues. And he finished, in today's world, the hope that consoles also irritates and annoys. Vargas smiled. He nodded his head in agreement. Manuel said goodbye to him, promising to return one day. Beyond the teachings of a new culture, he had just shown Vargas the light of reason, the path to eternity. Now the Knight of Concord could depart to continue his work, to bring forth from the darkness the splendor of the third millennium.